Have you seen on the news lately that the United States federal deficit is just hit $34 trillion? Have you ever wondered what you should be doing about that? Stay tuned and you can find out. I'm here today with Gracion Shaw, a investment advisor representative with Christian Values in Investing, and we're going to be talking about the $34 trillion deficit that the government has and what you should be doing about it, what kind of planning should be taking place. But it seems like it hits the news, and for one day, then most people just don't think about it anymore. But $34 trillion in debt. Now, if you look at how much money's in the world today, we're told is there's little over $90 trillion worldwide, and we actually have, and that's including gold, it's including silver, it's including real estate, it's including all assets, little over $90 trillion, and about 1/3 of that is the United States in debt. Grayson, that should be pretty shocking, I think, for most Christians and most people.
Yeah, absolutely, especially because it just keeps going up every day. We were talking about this last night, and you said that just from the morning when you were looking at it to 8 o'clock at night, it had gone up $500 million, and that's an entire fortune for most people, and that's just an insane amount of money, almost $500 million just in a 12-hour time period. It's really gotten out of hand, and it's an astronomical number that people have lost tabs with. I mean, $1 trillion. A lot of people don't even really get a grip of what that is.
$1 trillion, we cannot really, I don't believe, comprehend how much money that is, like you just said. I've heard different scenarios. If you took a trillion seconds, how far back it would go, and it's just mind blowing. If you took quarters, a trillion quarters, how many states would that cover, the total ground area of it? And it's just unreal to think about a trillion as a number. But the debt clock is telling us we have little over $34 trillion right now in debt. And if you start looking at unfunded liabilities, we're looking at in excess of $90 trillion. And that's a whole lot of money you kind of wrap your head around. And the problem with all this, Grayson, is that this really starts impeding the gross domestic product and how much our country grows. Growth in our country has slowed down in the last 4 years, and prior to that, during the Obama years, it slowed down, and it looks like it could be that a 2% growth might be where we're going to be over the next 10 years going forward.
Yeah, that's right. Unless, of course, there was something else that came out that was just an insane disruptive technology like the internet. That's looking like it's probably what's going to be par for the course for the future. But yeah, I mean, looking down the barrel of this debt, just imagine having $34,000 in credit card debt. It'd be a nightmare trying to get out of that. Our country's in $34 trillion of debt, and there's really no end in sight for it. Congress keeps on passing deficit spending budgets, and they just want to spend money like there ain't no tomorrow, and there's going to be a day of reckoning for it.
Yes, it reminds me of a story in the Bible that's found in Jeremiah chapter 6, and I want to read a little bit of that to you. And what it is, it's talking about the destruction of Jerusalem when Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians were going to come in and take the country over. The prophet prophesied this, but if you look at it and read it closely, it looks like it mirrors a lot of the United States. And let me just read a couple of those verses to you. It says, Jeremiah 6:1, flee for safety, people of Benjamin, flee from Jerusalem, sound the trumpet in Tekoa, raise a signal over back Hakerim, for disaster looms out of the north, even terrible destruction. That's a warning that's being given. And I think the warning has gone out for this debt that we have. There's never been a country this much in debt. There's never been a country that's ever dug their way out of having this kind of debt before. And if you go on down in Jeremiah, it talks about everybody is full of covetousness. And I think that's a good picture of the United States. It says even the ministers fall into covetousness. And we see so many preachers today on networks, and all they're doing is asking for money. They're not preaching the gospel of the kingdom. They're just asking for money. And it seems like this passage is a mirror of what's taking place here in the United States. And you say, well, what's that got to do with me and my life? So much of the country, Grayson, relies on the government. You got Social Security, you got so many things, Medicaid, Medicare, that the government has their hands in. And what happens when it gets to a point where they can't pay that like they were in the past? What will Americans do?
Well, I guess we'll have to be a lot more independent. For example, you're going to have to be able to balance a budget and not rely on bailouts from the government. We'll have to be more reliant on the church to solve those social needs. Maybe it'll be a good thing, and we'll be able to get back to that. But yeah, it's a real issue. One of these days, we're not going to be able to afford to pay for Social Security, at least in the amount that we're paying for it now. And it's going to be the same type of deal with Medicare and Medicaid, because we're looking at that being 2/3 of the necessary budget right now, and our interest on our debt is only increasing every day. There's going to be a time when we're not going to be able to afford that type of thing, and people are going to have to be able to have their own stuff, grow their own food, use a currency that may be different from what the U.S. government's providing, and basically be a lot more self-dependent than dependent on the government that's gotten us in this mess.
Well, Grace, I think so many people today, especially Christians, don't really understand the terminology. We have a national debt, which is a little over $34 trillion. Then we have an annual deficit. And the annual deficit, which means we are spending more money than what we have bringing in, is running somewhere around $1 or $2 trillion every year that we spend more money than what's coming in. And the Bible is plain. One of the biblical financial principles that we teach is you spend less than you make. But our country has not really been following what the Bible says, and we've been spending a whole lot more money than what's coming in. In 2015, I went to 3 or 4 think tanks in Washington, D.C., and every one I went to, I asked the question. I said, are we at a place of no return as far as how much debt the United States has? And Grayson, none of those think tanks in Washington, and they are supposed to have the smartest people sitting there thinking about what's going on in the country, how they can fix our problems. And nobody in any one of those think tanks would answer that question. They just skirted the question, which made me think at the time that they did believe that we were at a place that we could not return. And also we were only about $15-16 trillion in debt then. Now we're double what we were in 2015. Here's the thing with it. There was a guy in 1980 that came out. His name was Peter Grace, and he headed the Grace Commission, and they went out and presented to the Congress that the United States was overspending. And that's where we come out and found out that the United States government was spending $600-700 for hammers, $1,000 for commodes, that type stuff. And he was saying that if this didn't change by 2004, we'd be $4 trillion in debt, and in another 10 years would be $16 trillion in debt, and we would not be able to pay the interest on the loans. So he hit it dead on the money in 2004, but he missed it, and he missed it in 2004, but he got it right in 1994. The problem he didn't take into consideration, Grayson, was the growth of GDP. And GDP is very important when you're looking at debt, because if GDP keeps going up and it's growing faster than what the debt is, we can sustain the debt and keep going. But when the debt is growing faster than GDP, eventually it's going to catch up with us, and that's pretty much where we are today. We're looking at, we have debt to GDP today at 122%. The highest it's ever been was right after World War II in 1946, when it was about 118%. And this should be alarming to Christians.
Oh, for sure. Just like what you said, the borrower is slave to the lender. It's just a catastrophic example of poor financial stewardship. And unfortunately, politicians have found out that all they really have to do is promise that they're going to spend money and give people a handout, and they'll be able to get votes. And so, unfortunately, we can't just blame it all on them. We've voted in politicians over the years that have led to this and have kept this problem going. And unfortunately, we're gonna all have to pay the price for it eventually.
Well, Grayson, if you look at the rule of 72, it pretty much predicts that this debt that we have will double in another 16 years. So we'll be pretty close to $70 trillion 16 years from then. If it continues to grow at a 4.5% rate, it could end up growing faster than that. So it would actually shorten the time period. But in another 16 years, so in 32 years from now, we'll basically be about $140 trillion in debt. I don't think we can sustain that. I think that what's on the horizon, like it says in Jeremiah 6, is trouble. So what do you think, Grayson, that Christians can do today to help prepare themselves for what possibly could be on the horizon?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, don't panic about it. The first thing you should do in any situation like that is make sure that you're praying about it. Make sure that you're trusting God and that He's going to provide, and also just that He's going to work out all things for good for those who love Him. Also, it's good to kind of keep in mind what we're looking at. So if the U.S. dollar were to ever lose its world reserve currency status, or if there were ever a time of hyperinflation in the United States, what would be some things that would be good investments during that time? And the answer to that would be possibly other currencies. You might want to go to something that would be safer, like the pound in Britain, or looking at having the franc over there in Switzerland, or even Bitcoin, something like that that's going to hold its value and isn't just going to be able to run away based on inflation like the U.S. dollar potentially could. It would also be good to have hard assets like gold or silver or real estate, or a business that has commodities, or just really anything that you'll be able to increase prices for to keep up with the inflation. But yeah, it will be a difficult time. It'll be important to be able to grow food, to be able to have things to eat, maybe to have some rice, and and beans just to make it through that tough time. But it's going to be a difficult time when that does happen, but we should be able to get through it. And being prepared is always the best way to be.
So, what our government should be doing right now is spending less than they bring in. And that's what Christians need to be doing right now to get prepared for this. You need to live by a budget, spend less than what you make. You need to start eradicating your debt, start getting out of debt, so this won't be such a burden on you if or when this happens. Like Gracion said, you need to diversify your investments. The Bible says in Ecclesiastes 11:2, put your portion with 7 or 8, because you don't know what evil is coming upon the land. We don't know what's coming to the United States, but right now it doesn't look really good. So you need to diversify. You need to live on a budget. You need to be ready in case things really, really did get bad and we started having food shortages, things like that. You need to have some of that tucked away. Like Gracion was saying, you may want to pick up gardening, that type stuff, just to be prepared. We are just wanting to sound the trumpet, let you know that what's on the horizon, possibly somewhere down the road. It could be 10 years, could be 20 years, could be 30 years. But here's the thing with it. God knows when it's going to happen, or if he's going to allow it to happen, because God is in complete control. And we just got to look to him and put our faith in him. And we got to be wise steward in the meantime and manage our money properly and just be good stewards. And everything we do it as unto the Lord. Until next time, God bless you.